Some years ago, my partner Jane took on a new job, and it was our first ever job as a manager. And she was manager of an organisation called the Black Country Supply Service, who supplied supply teachers to the local schools. She went in on the first day and she came back home and she said, "Ian, it's horrible there." I said, "What do you mean it's horrible?" She said, "Well, the girls come in late, they break for lunch early, they come back from lunch late, and they leave early." Now, at the time I wasn't a coach, but I've been running businesses for a long time, and I knew that that sounded like a team that wasn't engaged. At the time I asked Jane that powerful question. I said, "Tell me, when they go home on an evening, Jane, do they know whether they've had a good day or a bad day?" And what Jane said is, "Well, they know whether they've been busy." I said, "That wasn't the question I asked." So we started talking about it, and it was a really, really simple business model. There were only really two things that were important: the number of phone calls that they took and the number of teachers that they sent out. Because people wouldn't ring up unless they had a need for a supply teacher, and obviously whether they supplied that or not would dictate whether they sent a teacher out. So I asked Jane, did she measure that? And she said yes. So I wrote her the world's simplest spreadsheet, and that spreadsheet generated a scoreboard, and this is the scoreboard. So the spreadsheet that I wrote, and it really was very, very simple, produced a graph that looked something like this. Nothing more complicated than that. This represented the number of phone calls, this represented the number of teachers that had been sent out. So having created a very, very simple scoreboard, Jane said, "Let me just make sure I've got this right. What you want me to do is count up the number of phone calls that we have, count up the number of teachers that we send out, put the two numbers into the spreadsheet and produce this graph." And I said, yes. She said, "Then I'll tell the girls that this is what it measures, and you reckon that'll solve all my problems?" And I had a moment of genius, I think, and I said, no, don't tell the girls, just pin it up on the notice board. Jane turned around and said, "Well, we don't have a notice board." Now that'll tell you something. But there was a pillar behind Jane's desk. So what we did is we pinned the graph up behind Jane's desk. Well, you can imagine what happened next. We didn't tell anybody, so the girls are nudging each other saying, "What's this?" "I don't know, it's something that Jane did." "What's that about?" "Don't know, she must be round the twist." After about an hour, somebody's curiosity got the best of them. And they said, "Jane, what's this graph?" "Oh," she said, "it's something Ian said that I should do. This column is the amount of phone calls that we've had. This other column is the amount of teachers that we've sent out." The next day she pinned the graph up again. One of the girls said to the other, "You see, I told you we were busy yesterday." A couple of days later somebody said, "But the difference in the height of these two columns must mean something." And Jane said, "Yeah, the difference is the people that have wanted our help that we haven't been able to give help to." In that very short week, the girls in that department took ownership of that graph. A compelling scoreboard depends upon two things: visibility and ownership. The fact that we didn't force it on them, the fact that we left it to their curiosity, meant that they took ownership. A few years later, that department had grown like Billy-O. It had won a prize. And when asked how, Jane put it down to our graphs. Because every day, every evening, when the team went home, they could tell whether they'd had a good day or a bad day. And it really is that simple. And that's why I call it the compelling scoreboard.